The smell of recycled cabin air still clung to my hair as I dragged my suitcase up the walkway, expecting silence. Instead, I heard the screech of metal biting into concrete coming from the $880,000 sanctuary we swore to protect. A white van sat in my driveway, doors gaping like a wound. Before I could reach for my phone, the garage door cracked open, spilling harsh work lights onto the lawn. Someone was inside. My name is Isla Lopez, and for the last 15 years, I have made a living by predicting the worst-case scenario. As a senior specialist at Northbridge Risk Solutions, my days are spent analyzing actuarial models, assessing liability, and telling Fortune 500 companies exactly where their armor has a crack. I look at a pristine contract and I see the loophole. I look at a construction site and I see the safety violation that will cost millions in litigation. I am paid to be paranoid. I am paid to notice when the numbers do not add up. Yet, as I sat in the back of a yellow taxi weaving through the mid-afternoon traffic of the suburbs, I was blissfully, stupidly blind to the catastrophe waiting for me in my own driveway. I had caught the first flight out of Boston, trading a scheduled dinner with a client for a cramped middle seat and a bag of stale pretzels. Just to get home 6 hours early. The East Coast trip had been grueling 3 days of negotiations that felt like trench warfare, and all I wanted was the specific, curated silence of my home, and it was a specific silence. We lived in Oak Creek, a neighborhood that prided itself on its hushed tones and manicured hedges. My house was not just a structure, it was an asset. It was valued at $880,000 in the last market assessment. A figure I checked monthly on Zillow not out of vanity, but out of a need for security. That number represented freedom. It represented the years I spent eating ramen in grad school, and the years I spent climbing the corporate ladder while others were taking gap years. I had bought the place with Oscar 3 years ago. But let's be honest with the math, 80% of the down payment had come from my bonuses. I called it our fortress. We had sworn to protect it like one. I pulled my phone out as the taxi exited the highway. I had texted Oscar from the tarmac at Logan Airport. Sending a simple message, landed early, can't wait to see you. I expected a call, or at least a string of heart emojis. Oscar was usually effusive, sometimes bordering on needy, which I found charming in small doses. Instead, his reply had come 40 minutes later, while I was waiting at baggage claim. Stuck at work. Big crisis. See you later. No emojis, no exclamation points, just 7 words that felt cold and flat, like a stone skipping across a frozen lake. I stared at the screen. It was uncharacteristic, but I rationalized it immediately. He was probably in a meeting with his district manager. Retail management was stressful. I told myself, I applied my professional logic to my personal life, smoothing over the jagged edge of his text until it felt safe to handle. I put the phone away. The taxi driver, a man who had spent the last 40 minutes complaining about the price of gas, finally turned onto my street. The trees here were old maples, their branches creating a canopy that usually made me feel like I was entering a sanctuary. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, dappling the asphalt. I rolled down the window, eager to smell the scent of cut grass and mulch that signified home. That was when I saw it. It was a disruption in the pattern so violent it made me physically recoil. Parked directly in front of my house, blocking the view of my carefully pruned hydrangeas, was a beat-up white van. It was not a delivery vehicle. It was a work van, the kind with rusted wheel wells and a bumper held on by hope and wire. The back doors were flung wide open, gaping like a dirty mouth. My stomach turned over. I leaned forward, gripping the leather of the taxi seat. "Stop here," I told the driver, my voice tighter than I intended. "You want the driveway?" he asked, slowing down. "No, just here, street level." I paid him, tipping 20% out of sheer muscle memory, and stepped out onto the curb. The taxi pulled away, leaving me standing there with my rolling suitcase. The air did not smell like mulch. It smelled of sawdust and something sharp, like burning metal. And then I heard it. It was a sound that had no business existing in my world. the high-pitched, grinding screech of a power drill biting into concrete. Zzz, zzz. It was coming from my house. I stood frozen on the sidewalk. My brain tried to process the data. Was there an emergency? Did a pipe burst? Had a tree fallen, but the sky was clear, and the house looked structurally sound from the outside. The windows were intact. The roof was fine. The noise was coming specifically from the garage. I looked at the van again. A coil of thick orange extension cord snaked out from the back of the vehicle. Dragging through my flower bed, my prize-winning azaleas were being crushed under the weight of the rubber casing and disappearing into the garage. Beside the van, stacked haphazardly on my driveway, were sheets of drywall and bundles of 2x4 lumber. My breath hitched. This was not a repair. This was construction. I pulled my phone out again, my fingers trembling slightly. I needed to see what was happening. We had installed a high-end security system 6 months ago, a comprehensive network of cameras that covered every angle of the exterior. I tapped the app icon, waiting for the familiar grid of live feeds to load. Connecting to front porch, connecting to driveway. Cam, the loading wheel spun and spun. Then, a gray screen appeared with a slash through a camera icon. Device offline. I stared at the words. My heart hammered against my ribs, syncing with the rhythm of the drilling from the garage. Offline. Devices went offline during power outages. Devices went offline when the Wi-Fi went down. But the streetlights were not flickering, and I could see the neighbor's sprinkler system running on its timer perfectly. The Wi-Fi router was on a backup battery. This was not a glitch. This was a disconnection. I looked at the timestamp on the last recorded clip. 12:45 in the afternoon. 2 hours ago, roughly the same time I was in the air. Somewhere over Pennsylvania. Someone had turned the cameras off. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't a burglary. Burglars smashed windows and grabbed jewelry. They did not bring drywall. Burglars did not park a van in the driveway in broad daylight. This was something else. This was permission. The anger came then, hot and sudden, flooding my veins. I left my suitcase right there on the sidewalk. It was a Toomey carry-on, worth $600, and I abandoned it as if it were garbage. I marched up the driveway, my heels clicking sharply on the pavement, though the sound was drowned out by the noise of the construction. As I got closer, the smell intensified. It was the smell of demolition old insulation, pulverized stone, and the ozone scent of stressed electrical motors. I saw a pile of debris near the garage door. I recognized the material immediately. It was the acoustic foam panels Oscar had installed 2 years ago when he went through his brief phase of wanting to learn the drums. They were ripped to shreds, piled up like dead bodies. The garage door was not fully open. It was cracked about 3 feet from the ground. Just enough to let air in and let the noise out, but low enough to hide the identities of whoever was inside from the street. It felt deliberate. It felt like a challenge. We are in here, doing what we want, but you don't get to see the whole picture. I stopped 3 feet from the garage door. The drilling stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was heavy, ringing in my ears. I could hear movement inside. Heavy boots on concrete, the clatter of tools being dropped, and then voices. "Hand me the level," a man's voice grunted. It was rough, unfamiliar. I took a breath. Steeling myself. I was Isla Lopez. I negotiated million-dollar settlements. I stared down corporate attorneys who billed $800 an hour. I was not going to be intimidated by a renovation I didn't authorize in my own house. I crouched down. The motion was undignified, but I didn't care. I ducked my head and stepped under the rising garage door. Moving from the bright afternoon sun into the dusty, artificial haze of the garage. Portable halogen work lights were set up on tripods, blasting blinding white light against the far wall. Dust motes danced in the beams like a snowstorm. My eyes took a second to adjust, but when they did, the breath left my lungs. My garage, my pristine, 2-car garage, where I kept my Audi, was gone. In its place was a construction zone. The floor had been cut open. a jagged trench running right down the center of the concrete slab where pipes were already being laid. The drywall on the east wall had been completely stripped away, exposing the wooden skeleton of the house. The insulation hung in pink, tufted clumps. There were 3 men in the room. 2 were wearing tool belts and covered in drywall dust. They froze when they saw me. Looking up from the trench they were digging, but it was the third person who caught my attention. Standing near the workbench, holding a set of blueprints that looked disturbingly official, was a woman. She had her back to me initially, pointing at the exposed studs with a manicured finger. She was wearing a cashmere shawl that looked far too expensive for a construction site, and her posture was rigid, commanding. "No," she said. Her voice was sharp, authoritative, and terrifyingly familiar. It was not the voice of a contractor. It was the voice of someone who believed she owned the ground she stood on. "I told you clearly. The kitchenette goes on this wall. Move the wiring. I want the sink under the window." She turned around then, sensing my presence. The halogen light caught the gold jewelry at her throat. She looked at me, and her expression didn't shift to guilt or surprise. It settled into a cool, impassive mask of recognition. "About time," she said. The devastation was not chaotic. That was the first thing my risk assessment brain registered, and it was the detail that made my stomach turn over with cold. Hard nausea. Vandalism is usually messy, a crime of passion and adrenaline. This was surgical. This was planned. I stood there, my designer heels sinking into a layer of fine white gypsum dust that coated the concrete floor like snow, and took inventory of the violation. The trench cut into the slab was straight, laser straight, running 6 feet long and about 2 feet wide, right through the spot where I usually parked. Thick white PVC pipes snaked through the gouge in the earth, ready to carry sewage and water. They were turning my garage into a residence. The acoustic foam was not just torn down, it had been scraped away to make room for framing studs that were already bolted to the floor. A rough-in for a shower pan sat in the corner where Oscar kept his golf clubs. "Isla," Dolores said again, stepping over a bundle of electrical conduit as if she were navigating a garden path. She smoothed the front of her shawl, her face arranging itself into a mask of benevolent pity. "You are back early. This is unfortunate. We wanted to have the drywall up before you saw the skeleton of it all. It looks much worse than it is. Really, just the messy phase." She spoke as if I had walked in on her wrapping a birthday present, not overseeing the demolition of my property. "Get out," I said. My voice was low, barely audible over the hum of the portable generator in the corner. Now, a second voice chimed in. Ria Mendoza, Oscar's younger sister, emerged from behind a stack of 2x4s. She was holding a stark white Starbucks cup, looking bored. She wore yoga pants and a hoodie, the uniform of someone who had nowhere to be on a Tuesday afternoon. She leaned against the workbench, my workbench, where I potted plants in the spring, and took a slow sip of her drink. "Don't be dramatic, Isla," Ria said, her eyes flicking over my travel clothes with disjointed amusement. "Mom is right. It was supposed to be a surprise. Oscar wanted to reveal the studio when it was fully painted, sage green. I think very calming." "A studio," I repeated. The word tasted like ash. I looked from the trench to the pipes. "You are plumbing my garage. You are cutting into the foundation." "Well, obviously," Ria said, rolling her eyes. "I can't live in a garage without a bathroom. Isla, I am not an animal, and Mom needs a place to stay when she visits to help with the baby. Eventually." My vision tunneled. "You are moving in." "It is an ADU," Dolores corrected gently, using the acronym for Accessory Dwelling Unit, with the confidence of someone who had been watching too much HGTV. "A mother-in-law suite, or a sister-in-law suite, for now." Oscar and I discussed it. "Your house is 2,500 square feet. Isla, it is just the two of you. It is excessive. Ria is going through a transition. She needs stability. We are simply maximizing the asset." "Maximizing the asset," I echoed. "You are destroying my home." I turned to the workers. The two men in the trench had stopped digging. They were leaning on their shovels, looking back and forth between me and Dolores like spectators at a tennis match. A third man, older, with a clipboard, stepped forward. He looked annoyed, not guilty. "Who are you?" I asked him. "Foreman, Rourke," he grunted. "Look, lady, we are on a schedule. The concrete truck is coming at 4. We need this trench cleared." "There will be no concrete," I said, my voice rising, finally cracking through the professional veneer. "Pack up your tools. Get your van off my driveway, right now." Rourke looked at Dolores. He did not move. "He is not going anywhere," Dolores said, her voice dropping the sweet act for a fraction of a second, revealing the steel beneath. "We have a contract." "I am the owner of this house," I snapped. "My name is on the deed. I did not sign a contract. I did not authorize a permit. If you do not leave, I am calling the police for trespassing and property damage." Rourke sighed. A long, weary sound of a man who dealt with domestic disputes too often. He flipped a page on his clipboard and held it out to me. "I got a signed work order and a copy of the town building permit right here," he said. "Everything is legal. Deposit cleared 3 days ago. $5,000 up front." I snatched the clipboard from his hand. The paper crinkled under my grip. There it was. Permit number 49221, issued by the County Building Department. Scope of work: conversion of existing detached garage to habitable living space. Includes plumbing and electrical. And at the bottom, the signature, Isla Lopez. I stared at it. The ink looked black and firm. The loops on the L and the Z were sweeping and elegant. It looked like my signature. It looked exactly like the signature I put on my tax returns, on my mortgage documents, on my marriage license, but I had not signed it. The date next to the signature was January 12th. 3 days ago, I was in a conference room in Boston, negotiating a liability clause for a pharmaceutical distributor. I was 500 miles away when this pen touched this paper. "This is a forgery," I said, looking up at Rourke. "I was not even in the state on the 12th. "Looks real enough to me," Rourke said, taking the clipboard back, and the check cleared, drawn on a joint account, Oscar and Isla Mendoza. I felt the blood drain from my face. I never took Oscar's name legally. I was Isla Lopez. But our joint account, the one we used for household expenses, the one I contributed 70% of the funds to, was labeled under both names. "Oscar agreed to this," Rhea said, pushing off the workbench and walking closer. She invaded my personal space, smelling of vanilla latte and defiance. "He knows we need this. He knows you have more than you need. In a marriage, what is yours is his. That is how it works. Isla, you do not get to hoard space just because you make more money. He does not have the right to unilaterally renovate the property," I said, fighting to keep my hands from shaking. "And neither do you." I turned to the keypad on the wall near the door into the kitchen. I needed to get inside. I needed to find my Starlink router. I needed to find the hard copies of my deed. I reached for the keypad to punch in my code. "Oh, don't bother," Dolores said. She reached into her purse a knockoff Louis Vuitton that I knew Oscar had bought her last Christmas and pulled out a small, gray plastic remote. It was a garage door opener, not the spare one we kept in the kitchen drawer, a new one. She pressed the button. The large overhead door jerked, trying to close, but the safety sensors tripped on the van's bumper and it reversed back up. "Oscar gave me my own," she said, clutching the remote like a scepter. "So I can come and go without bothering you. Once the suite is finished, I will have my own key to the side door, of course, but for now, this is easier for the contractors." The violation hit a new peak. It wasn't just the construction, it was the access. They had been coming and going. They had a key to my life. "Give me that," I demanded, reaching out. Dolores pulled her hand back, tucking the remote against her chest. "Oscar gave this to me. It is not yours to take." "I am calling the cops," I said, reaching for my phone again. "This is insane." "Go ahead," Rhea sneered. "Call them. Tell them your husband is renovating his own house to help his mother and sister. See who they arrest. You think the police care about a domestic dispute over a remodel? They will laugh at you." She was right, and the realization was a cold bucket of water. Unless I could prove the forgery instantly, which required a forensic analysis, not a patrol officer, this was a civil matter. It was a dispute between spouses. The police would look at the permit, look at the marriage, and tell us to take it to civil court. Meanwhile, the concrete truck was coming at 4. I looked at Rourke. "I am telling you, as the property owner, to stop. If you pour concrete today, I will sue your company for every dime of damages. I will tie you up in litigation for 3 years. I do this for a living. Do you want to be a defendant? Or do you want to pack up?" Rourke hesitated. He looked at the trench, then at the angry woman in the business suit, and then at the mother-in-law holding the remote. "Mrs. Mendoza," Rourke said, addressing Dolores, not me. "You said the wife was on board. You said she was just difficult." "She is just tired," Dolores said soothingly. Stepping between me and the foreman, she placed a hand on my arm. I flinched as if she had burned me. "Isla, dear, you are hysterical. You need a nap. Let the men work. We can discuss the paint colors later. I promise. We will let you pick the curtains." "I don't want to pick the curtains," I shouted, the sound echoing off the bare studs. "I want my garage back." "Oscar said you would be like this," Rhea muttered, shaking her head. "He said you would make it about the money, always about the money with you. You never think about family." "This is not my family," I said, pointing a trembling finger at the two of them. "You are guests, uninvited guests. And you." I turned to Rourke. "Stop, now." Rourke looked at Dolores. He was waiting for the person who held the checkbook to give the order. He was not looking at me, in his eyes. I was just the hysterical wife. Dolores was the client. Dolores smiled at him. "Ignore her. Mr. Rourke, continue. My son is the one who hired you, and my son is the one who will pay the balance. If you stop now, you are in breach of contract with him." Rourke nodded. Seemingly satisfied with that logic, he turned back to the men in the trench. "All right, let's get that conduit laid. Truck's here in 90 minutes. The drill started up again. The sound went through my skull like a nail. They were ignoring me. In my own house, standing in the dust of my own foundation, I had been rendered invisible by a fake signature and a husband who wasn't there. I looked at Rhea. She was smirking over the rim of her coffee cup. "You really should just go inside and unpack, Isla," she said, her voice dripping with triumphant condescension. "Don't make a scene in front of the neighbors. You are embarrassing yourself. Besides," she gestured vaguely to the hole in the floor that used to be my parking spot. "You just need to get used to sharing. It is not all about you anymore." The screech of the drill cut off again, but this time, it was not because of my command. It was because a gray Toyota Camry had just swerved into the driveway, pulling up onto the grass to bypass the work van. My husband had arrived. Oscar Mendoza slammed his car door and jogged toward the garage, his tie loosened, his suit jacket flapping open. He looked frantic, the picture of a man who had rushed home to put out a fire. He stopped at the threshold of the garage, blinking against the dust, his eyes darting from the trench in the floor to his mother, then to the foreman, and finally landing on me. "What is going on?" he shouted, his voice echoing off the bare studs. He sounded genuinely baffled. I could hear the yelling from the street. Why is everyone shouting? It was a perfect performance. If I did not know him better, I would have believed he was stumbling into this chaos blind. But I noticed the lack of surprise when he looked at the demolished wall. He did not gasp at the hole in the floor. He only reacted to the tension in the room. "Oscar," I said, my voice shaking with a rage I was trying desperately to metabolize into professionalism. "Explain this, now." He crossed the distance between us in 3 long strides. He smelled of office coffee and that cedarwood cologne I had bought him for our anniversary. He reached out and grabbed my shoulders. pulling me into a hug that felt less like an embrace and more like a restraint. His hands were heavy, pinning my arms to my sides. "Isla, baby, you are shaking," he said, his voice dropping to a soothing, intimate register intended only for me. "Just breathe. You are exhausted from the trip. You are not thinking clearly." I tried to pull back, but he held on tight, turning his body so he was shielding me from the workers. But over his shoulder, I saw him make eye contact with Dolores. He gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod, a signal. "Keep going. I have her handled." I shoved him away. The physical contact felt like a betrayal in itself. "Do not handle me, Oscar," I snapped. "Look at our garage. Your mother says you authorized this. She says you gave her a remote. She says we are moving your family in here." Oscar ran a hand through his dark hair, looking pained. He turned to Rourke, the foreman, offering an apologetic grimace. "Give us a minute. Guys, my wife is she is very particular about the house. She was not expecting the scope of the work to be this advanced." "Advanced?" I laughed. A harsh, humorless sound. "They are cutting into the foundation. Oscar, did you agree to this?" Oscar sighed, the sound of a patient man dealing with an unreasonable child. "Isla, look, I did not want to burden you with the details while you were on a business trip. You have been so stressed with the Northbridge merger. I wanted to take this off your plate." "Take what off my plate?" "The demolition of my property." "Our property," he corrected gently. "And I did it for us. Think about it. Isla, you are always talking about asset utilization. You run risk models all day. A 2-car garage in this zip code is wasted square footage. By converting this into an ADU, a studio apartment, we increase the property value by at least 15%. It pays for itself in equity within 2 years. He was using my language. He was weaponizing my career against me. He was trying to frame this disastrous invasion as a savvy investment strategy. "And once Mom and Rhea get back on their feet," he continued, "smooth as oil. We can rent it out. Passive income, $1,200 a month. Easy. It is a smart financial move. Isla, I thought you would be proud of me for taking the initiative." I stared at him. The gaslighting was so thick I could almost taste it. He was twisting reality, trying to make me feel guilty for being angry about a construction crew tearing apart my home without my consent. "This is not about equity," I said, pointing at Rhea, who was now scrolling on her phone, looking bored. "This is about you moving your family onto my property without asking me. Where is the permit?" Oscar Rourke showed me a permit with my signature on it. I did not sign it. Oscar waved his hand dismissively. "It is just paperwork, Isla. I handled it." "Handled it how?" "By forging my name. I signed for us," he said, his eyes widening with feigned innocence. "We are married. It is a joint asset. I signed on your behalf because you were busy. It is standard procedure." "It is a felony," I said. "Show me the contract. Show me the permit application. I want to see the original documents." Oscar hesitated. He reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He unfolded it but did not hand it to me. He held it up, just out of reach, like he was showing a badge. It was a photocopy, a bad one. The toner was low, leaving streaks across the page. I could see the header of the county building department, and I could see the block of text for the scope of work. But the signature line was blurry, a smudge of black ink that could have been anything. "See," he said, folding it back up quickly before I could snatch it. "Everything is above board. I have a contractor license number. I have insurance binders. I did my homework. Isla, let me see that clearly," I demanded, reaching for his pocket. He caught my wrist, not hard, but firm. "Stop it. You are acting paranoid. Why do you not trust me? I am your husband." "Because I came home to a construction site," I yelled. "Isla," Dolores's voice cut through the air like a whip. She had stepped forward, her face flushed with indignation. "Lower your voice. You are making a scene. Look at poor Mr. Rourke. Look at these workers. You are embarrassing Oscar in front of them. Is this how a supportive wife behaves? I am not a supportive wife right now. Dolores, I shot back. I am a homeowner whose house is being vandalized. I turned to Rourke. The foreman was checking his watch, clearly losing patience with the family drama. Mr. Rourke, I said, my voice steadying into the cold, hard tone I used for hostile negotiations. I am revoking permission for this job, effective immediately. You and your crew need to pack up your equipment and leave. If you drill one more hole, if you pour 1 ounce of concrete, I will consider it criminal trespassing. Rourke looked at Oscar. Boss, we have the concrete truck 5 miles out. If I turn it around, you eat the cost, plus the cancellation fee for the crew today. Oscar stepped in front of me, blocking my view of the foreman. His face lost the soft, pleading look and hardened into something petulant. Isla, stop, he hissed. Do you know how much that fee is? If we stop now, we lose the $5,000 deposit, plus a 30% breach of contract penalty. That is thousands of dollars you are throwing away just to prove a point. Are you really that petty? I am not paying a dime, I said. You are. It comes out of the joint account, he said, his voice rising. It is our money. You are burning our money because you cannot handle a little surprise. You are being irrational. I am calling the police, I said. The air in the garage changed instantly. The ambient hum of the generator seemed to drop away. Oscar froze. Dolores gasped. No, Oscar said. It wasn't a request. It was a command. You are not calling the cops on me. I am calling them to report an unauthorized contractor and potential fraud, I said, pulling my phone from my pocket and unlocking the screen. Let them sort out who signed what. Oscar lunged for the phone. He didn't hit me, but he grabbed my hand, his fingers digging into my knuckles. Do not turn a family disagreement into a legal matter. Isla, once you bring the police in, you cannot undo it. You want the neighbors to see squad cars in our driveway? You want your boss at Northbridge to hear you got into a domestic disturbance. He knew exactly where to hit. My reputation, my privacy, the carefully constructed image of my life. Get your hand off me, I said quietly. He let go, but he stood close, looming over me. I am trying to protect you from yourself. You are tired. You are jet-lagged. Just go inside, take a shower, and let us finish the rough-in. We can talk about the budget at dinner. He was trying to bulldoze me. He was banking on the fact that I hated conflict, that I hated public scenes, that I would fold just to make the noise stop, and for a second, the exhaustion almost won. I almost wanted to just walk into the house and lock the door and pretend none of this was happening, but then, one of the workers spoke up. It was the younger one, the guy who had been holding the level earlier. He was wiping sweat off his forehead with a dirty rag, looking uncomfortable with the domestic intensity. Look, lady, he said, addressing me. I don't know what the problem is. We just followed the instructions in the email. You were very specific about the timeline. I turned to him, frowning. What email? The one you sent on Monday, the worker said, shrugging. To the company inbox. Rourke showed it to us this morning. I did not send an email on Monday, I said. Yeah, you did, the worker insisted, looking defensive. The boss forwarded it. It came from isla.lopez@gmail.com. It said, and I remember because it was weird, it said, I will be uncontactable by phone due to meetings, so please take all site directives from Oscar. Start demolition immediately. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I stared at the worker. Isla.lopez@gmail.com. Yeah, he said. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine that had nothing to do with the drafty garage. My email address, I said slowly, is isla.lopez@northbridge.com or i.lopez92@gmail. I do not own isla.lopez@gmail. The silence that followed was absolute. I looked at Oscar. For the first time since he arrived, the mask slipped. His eyes darted away from mine, down to his shoes, then back to Rourke, panic flickering behind the bluster. Someone had created an email account in my name. Someone had impersonated me to authorize this construction. This wasn't just Oscar being presumptuous. This wasn't just a husband making a bad decision. This was identity theft. "You created a fake email account," I whispered, the realization landing with the weight of a stone. "That is ridiculous," Oscar stammered, his face flushing a deep, guilty red. "Typo. The guy probably just misremembered the address. You know how contractors are." "I remember what I read," the worker muttered, crossing his arms. "Oscar," I said, my voice devoid of any emotion now, just pure, cold clarity. "You didn't just sign for me. You became me." I looked at the phone in my hand. The police were no longer a threat I was holding over him. They were the only logical next step. "Get out," I said to the room at large, but my eyes were locked on my husband. "All of you, now." The police cruiser rolled up the driveway 10 minutes later, silent, with no sirens, just a heavy, authoritative presence that usually signaled safety. But as I watched Officer Miller step out of the vehicle, adjusting his belt, I knew he was not here to save me. He was here to assess, categorize, and likely dismiss. Oscar met him halfway down the driveway. My husband had smoothed his hair and buttoned his suit jacket. He looked like the picture of a beleaguered suburban taxpayer, the reasonable man dealing with a domestic hiccup. I stayed by the garage door, my arms crossed, forcing my breathing to slow down. In my line of work, I knew that the person who screams loses credibility. The person who cries gets labeled unstable. To be heard, I had to be colder than the concrete they had just cut open. "Officer," Oscar said, extending a hand, "I am so sorry my wife called you. We are having a bit of a miscommunication about a renovation project. You know how stressful construction can be." Officer Miller looked at the white van, the pile of drywall, and then at me. He saw a woman covered in a fine layer of gypsum dust, standing defensively in front of a hole in her house. "Ma'am," Miller asked, walking past Oscar, "you called about a trespassing in progress." "I did," I said, my voice steady. "I returned from a business trip to find this construction crew dismantling my garage. I did not authorize this work. I did not sign the permit. I want them removed from my property." Miller looked at Rourke, who was leaning against his van, arms crossed, looking bored. Then he looked back at Oscar. "Are you two married?" Miller asked. "Yes," Oscar said quickly. 7 years. It is our house. Joint checking account. Look, officer, I hired the crew. It is a surprise gift for her that went sideways. It is a civil matter, really." I saw the shift in Miller's eyes immediately. The tension left his shoulders. To him, this was no longer a crime scene. It was a marriage squabble. "Ma'am," Miller said, turning to me with a tone of exhausted patience, "if you are married and he lives here, he has a right to hire contractors. We cannot kick a husband out of his own house, and we cannot kick his workers out if he invited them in. This is a civil dispute. You need to take this up with your lawyers, not the police department." I dug my fingernails into my palms. I wanted to scream about the fake email. I wanted to scream about the forgery. But I knew Miller was not a forensic document examiner. He was a patrol officer with 20 minutes to spare before his shift ended. "I understand," I said, cutting off Oscar's smug nod. "I am not asking you to arrest my husband right now. I am asking you to file an incident report." Miller blinked. "A report?" "Yes," I said. "I want a written record that on this date and time, I informed law enforcement that these modifications were unauthorized. I want you to document the license plate of that van. I want you to document the name of the construction company and the state of the property. If this ends up in court for fraud, which it will, I need an official timestamp." Oscar's smile faltered. He didn't expect me to think about the paperwork. He expected me to cry. Miller sighed, pulling out his notebook. "Fine, I can do an informational report. Name of the company." I pointed at the van. Rourke Renovations. License plate. Bravo Charlie 5, 882. I made them stand there, while Miller wrote it all down. I made Rourke give his full name. I made Oscar state for the record that he was the one who authorized the work. When Miller was done, he handed me a card with the case number. "Work it out, folks," Miller said, getting back into his cruiser. "Cheaper than divorce." He drove away. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Oscar looked at me, his eyes hard. Dolores and Rhea were standing by the Camry, watching us like vultures waiting for roadkill. "You are unbelievable," Oscar hissed. "You just humiliated us." "Pack your things," I said. "You are not staying here tonight. It is my house too," he challenged. "The locks are being changed in an hour," I said. "You can sleep at your mother's. Take your contractors and your family and get off my driveway." Oscar looked at the garage, then at me. He realized I wasn't bluffing. He signaled Rourke with a sharp jerk of his head. The workers began throwing their tools back into the van with loud, angry clatters. 10 minutes later, they were gone. The van, the Camry, the noise. I was alone. I walked into the house, my legs feeling like lead. The familiarity of the kitchen, the quartz countertops I had picked out. The espresso machine we used every morning felt alien. It was like walking onto a movie set after the actors had left. The house was quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. It was holding its breath. I pulled out my phone and dialed the one number I knew would answer. "Tessa," I said when the line clicked open. "I need you. Where are you?" Her voice was sharp, alert, no pleasantries. That was why I loved her. "Home. It is bad. Tess." Oscar, he gutted the garage. He tried to move his family in. "I am on my way," she said. "I am bringing wine and a baseball bat. Which do you need first?" "I need a charger," I said, my voice cracking for the first time. "And I need a witness." 20 minutes, she said. While I waited, I went into operational mode. I could not sit down. If I sat down, I would collapse. I Googled emergency locksmith 24 hours and clicked the first result with 5 stars. "This is Mike," a gruff voice answered. "I need a full rekey," I said. 3 exterior doors, and I need a garage door opener reset. Can you come now? "Emergency rates apply after 5, Mike said. "It is going to be 300 just to roll the truck." "I do not care," I said. "Be here in 30 minutes. Tessa arrived in 18. I heard her Volvo screech into the driveway, braking hard. She found me in the kitchen, staring at the blank screen of the security monitor. Tessa was a petite woman with the energy of a Category 5 hurricane. She wore a tailored blazer and combat boots, a look that confused people until they realized she worked in crisis management for a tech firm. She walked in, took one look at my face, and hugged me so hard my ribs creaked. She didn't ask, "Are you okay?" She knew I wasn't. She pulled a heavy Anchor power bank out of her bag and plugged my phone in. "Charge, then talk." I told her everything. The text, the van, the trench, the fake email, the police. Tessa listened, her eyes narrowing into slits. When I finished, she didn't offer platitudes. She stood up. "Show me the garage," she said. We walked out to the scene of the crime. The sun was setting now, casting long, bruised shadows across the driveway. The garage door was still stuck halfway open, broken by the safety sensor incident. Tessa pulled out her phone, an iPhone Pro with the best camera on the market. "I am going to video everything. Narrate it for me." She started recording. January 19th, 5:45 p.m., Tessa announced to the camera, her voice professional and crisp. "Location residence of Isla Lopez, documenting unauthorized demolition." She moved through the garage like a crime scene investigator. She filmed the trench, zooming in on the severed rebar. "Depth of cut, approximately 20 inches, she noted. "Structural integrity of the slab compromised." She filmed the pile of destroyed acoustic foam. "Destruction of personal property." She filmed the electrical panel, where wires had been ripped out and left dangling. Code violation, exposed wiring. Watching her turn my trauma into data made me feel stronger. It wasn't just a mess anymore. It was evidence. It was a file I could build. Okay, Tessa said, lowering the phone. We have the physical damage. Now we need the paper trail. Where are your house docs? In the filing cabinet in the office, I said. I keep everything locked. We went back inside. The office was a small room off the living room where I kept my life organized. I had a metal filing cabinet in the corner. I reached for the key on my key ring, but then I stopped. The lock cylinder on the cabinet was scratched, tiny. Silver grooves around the keyhole caught the light. Tessa, I whispered. She came over instantly. What? Someone tried to shim this, I said. I inserted my key. It turned, but it felt gritty. I pulled the drawer open. At first glance, it looked neat. The hanging folders were color-coded. But as I flipped through them, my stomach dropped. The house folder was usually at the front. It was pushed to the back. I pulled it out. The deed, the survey, the title insurance policy. They were all there, but they were out of order. The survey, which was a large folded map, had been refolded incorrectly, the creases bulging. The title insurance policy had a dog-eared corner that wasn't there before. He was looking for something, I said, my hands trembling. He went through this while I was gone. Why? Tessa asked. He knows the house is in your name. He knows you bought it. Maybe he was checking for loopholes, I said. Or maybe he was checking to see if I had updated my will. The thought made me cold. Router, Tessa said suddenly. If he forged an email, he had to do it from somewhere. Did he use your laptop? I had my laptop with me in Boston, I said. Then he used the desktop or his phone. We went to the living room where the main Wi-Fi router sat on the media console. It was a high-end gaming router I had bought for speed. It had an app that tracked everything. I opened the app on my phone, device history. I scrolled back to Monday. There was a login to the router's admin panel at 12:45 p.m., the exact time the cameras went offline. He logged in as admin, I said, showing Tessa the screen. He did not just unplug the cameras. He went into the software and disabled them. That takes intent. That takes Googling how to do it. Or, Tessa said darkly, someone showed him how. The doorbell rang. It was a harsh, buzzing sound that made us both jump. I checked the peephole. It wasn't Oscar. It was a man in a blue windbreaker holding a toolbox. Locksmith, I said, exhaling. I opened the door. Mike the locksmith looked like he chewed nails for breakfast. He looked at me, then at the garage, then at the scratch on the filing cabinet I pointed out to him later. You want the nuclear option? He asked. Nuclear, I confirmed. I want keys that cannot be duplicated at a hardware store. I want deadbolts with reinforced strike plates, and I want the keypad on the garage wiped. For the next 2 hours, the sound of the drill returned, but this time it was the sound of security. Mike worked efficiently, replacing every cylinder. He installed high-security multi-lock deadbolts. He reset the smart lock on the front door, disconnecting it from the Wi-Fi bridge so it could only be opened manually for now. No more remote access, Mike said, handing me a small card with a code. This is the master code. Do not write it down. When he was done, he stood in the foyer and held out a hand. In his palm lay 2 heavy silver keys with square heads. They looked industrial. They looked serious. $380, Mike said. Parts and labor? I Venmo'd him the money right there. You are safe tonight, lady, he said, packing up his tools. Ain't nobody getting in here unless they bring a battering ram. He left. I stood in the hallway, holding the new keys. They were cold against my skin. Tessa came up behind me and handed me a glass of wine, a very large glass of wine. You okay? She asked softly. I looked at the keys. Yesterday. My biggest worry was a contract clause for a shipping company. Today, I was fortifying my home against my husband. The shock was fading, receding like a tide, and in its place, something jagged and hard was emerging. I looked at the disordered files on the desk. I looked at the dark garage where my car should have been. I thought about the fake email account, isla.lopez@gmail. He had stolen my name. He had stolen my safety. He had tried to steal my house. No, I said, closing my fist around the keys until the metal edges bit into my skin. I am not okay, but I am done being surprised. I turned to Tessa. My eyes were dry. He wants a war, I said. He thinks because I am quiet. I am weak. He thinks because I pay the bills. I will just pay to fix this to avoid a scene. I took a sip of the wine. It tasted sharp and grounding. Tomorrow, we stop playing defense, I said. Tomorrow, I hire a lawyer, and I'm going to bury him in so much paperwork he will wish he never learned how to sign my name. I walked to the front door and threw the new deadbolt. Click. A solid, heavy thud of steel sliding into place. It was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. The morning sun hit the newly installed deadbolt on my front door with a glare that felt less like a greeting and more like an interrogation. I had slept for exactly 3 hours, my body curled around a pillow that used to be Oscar's, listening to the house settle, every creak of the floorboards. Sounds that used to be the comforting language of home now sounded like footsteps. But when I woke up at 6 a.m, the fear had evaporated. In its place was a cold, crystalline clarity. I was a risk analyst. When a system failed, you did not cry over the broken code. You audited the breach. You identified the liability. You executed the recovery plan. I dressed in my sharpest charcoal suit, the one I usually reserved for board meetings with hostile auditors. I did not make coffee. I drank a glass of cold water, picked up the file folder Tessa and I had compiled the night before, and walked out to my car. My Audi was parked on the street because my garage was currently a crime scene. My destination was the law offices of Keene and Associates, located in a glass and steel building downtown that smelled of polished mahogany and billable hours. Marcus Keene was the real estate attorney who had handled the closing on the house 3 years ago. He was a man who viewed the world through the lens of property rights and contract law, a perspective I desperately needed. I had texted him at 5 a.m. requesting an emergency consultation, and to his credit, he had squeezed me in before his 9 o'clock deposition. Marcus met me in his conference room. He was a man in his late 50s with silver hair and eyes that had seen every possible way a human being could lie about square footage. He did not offer me coffee or sympathy. He pointed to the chair opposite his desk and opened a fresh legal pad. "Tell me exactly what happened." "Isla," he said. "Chronological order, facts only." I laid it out. The early return from Boston, the van, the trench, the mother-in-law with the remote, the claim of a permit, the incident report from Officer Miller, and finally, the fake email address the contractor claimed had authorized the work when I finished. Marcus sat back in his leather chair, tapping his pen against the pad. The silence in the room was heavy, insulated by the thick glass walls. "You have a mess," Marcus said. It was not a judgment. It was a diagnosis. "But it is a mess we can categorize. We are looking at several distinct causes of action here. First, civil trespass. Even if he is your husband, the contractors he hired did not have the consent of the sole title holder to alter the structural integrity of the building. Second, property damage. They compromised the slab. That is not a cosmetic change. That is structural modification." He leaned forward, his expression darkening. "But the third part is the one that changes this from a domestic dispute to a criminal exposure for them. The email. You are absolutely certain you did not send an email from an account named isla.lopez@gmail.com. "I have never owned that account," I said firmly. "I use Outlook for work and a specific Gmail address for personal use that I have had since college. I can subpoena the IP logs if I have to." "We might get to that," Marcus said. "If someone created an email address in your name to authorize a contract, that is identity theft. It is fraud. And if they use that email to apply for the building permit, it is perjury on a government document. That is a felony." He wrote identity misuse and permit fraud on his pad, circling them twice. The sight of those words in ink gave me a grim sense of satisfaction. It validated that I wasn't crazy. I wasn't an unsupportive wife. I was the victim of a calculated crime. "Here is the plan," Marcus said, tearing the sheet off the pad. "First, we stop the bleeding. I am drafting a cease and desist letter to Rourke Renovations immediately. It will state that the contract was authorized by a fraudulent party and that any further entry onto the property will be treated as criminal trespass. I will have it couriered to their business address by noon." "Good," I said. "I do not want them near my house." "Second," Marcus continued, "we need to kill that permit. If there is an active building permit on file, Rourke technically has a legal right to be there to inspect his work. We need to get the building department to issue a stop work order. I will file an emergency motion stating that the permit was obtained with a forged signature. Once the red tag goes up on your garage door, if they touch a hammer, they get arrested." He paused, looking at me over the rim of his glasses. "Third, we need to know what this is going to cost, not emotionally, financially. I want you to hire an independent structural engineer, not a contractor, an engineer. I want a report on exactly what that trench did to your foundation and what it will cost to fix it. We need a number. When we go to court, we do not ask for justice. We ask for $40,000 in remediation costs." "I can call the firm we used for the Northbridge audit," I said, taking notes furiously. "They have a structural division." "Do it," Marcus said. "Get them out there today." Then his face softened slightly, the lawyer mask slipping just a fraction. "Isla, we need to talk about the husband." I stiffened. "What about him?" "The house is in your name," Marcus said. "I remember the closing. You put down the deposit. You hold the mortgage. But you are married. In this state, improvements made to a marital home, even if it is separately titled, can complicate things. Oscar is going to claim he was improving the marital asset. He is going to claim implied consent. He is going to say you talked about this over dinner 6 months ago and he was just executing your shared vision." "We never talked about this," I said. "I hate a DUS. I like my parking space." "I believe you," Marcus said. "But a judge might see a husband trying to help his family. We need to sever the financial tie. If he forged your name, he pierced the marital veil. He acted as a third party, not a spouse, but you need to protect yourself." He reached into a drawer and pulled out a business card. It was a different color than his stark white with black text. "Elise Vance," he said. "She is a family law specialist. She eats forensic accounting for breakfast. You need to call her, today." "I am not here for a divorce," I said, though the words felt hollow as I said them. "I am here to save my house." "Isla," Marcus said gently, "your husband cut a hole in your floor and moved his mother in without asking you. He created a fake email to impersonate you. You are already divorced. You just haven't signed the paperwork yet." The truth of it hit me like a physical blow. I took the card. "Okay," I whispered. "I will call her." "One more thing," Marcus said. "The mother and the sister. You said they had keys. You said they refused to leave." "Dolores had a garage opener," I said. "She said Oscar gave it to her. She treated the house like she owned it." "Then we file for a temporary restraining order," Marcus said. "Based on harassment and unauthorized entry, it is a high bar to get a TRO against in-laws. But if we frame it around the property damage and the refusal to vacate, we might get a judge to sign off on a no-contact order regarding the residence. At the very least, it creates a paper trail that says you are not welcome here." I spent the next 2 hours in Marcus's conference room, filling out affidavits. I detailed the interaction in the garage. I wrote down Ria's comments about me hoarding space. I wrote down Dolores's refusal to hand over the remote. By the time I signed the bottom of the last page, my hand was cramping, but my mind was clear. I wasn't just Isla Lopez, the surprised wife. I was Isla Lopez, the plaintiff. When I left Marcus's office, the sun was high and bright. I sat in my car and made the call to the structural engineer. They could come at 3 in the afternoon. Then I called Elise Vance's office and set up a consultation for the following morning. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Oscar. "Can we talk? I'm staying at Mom's. I just want to explain." I did not reply. I took a screenshot of the text and emailed it to Marcus. That was my new reality. Every communication was evidence. I drove back to the house to meet the structural engineer. His name was David, a serious man with a laser measure and a camera that looked more expensive than my car. He spent an hour in the garage, making non-committal humming noises that made my anxiety spike. "Well," David said finally, standing up and dusting off his knees, "it is fixable, but it is not cheap. They cut through a tension cable in the slab." "A tension cable?" I asked. "Post-tensioned concrete," David explained. "There are steel cables running through the slab to hold it together. They cut one. You are lucky the slab didn't crack all the way to the kitchen. To fix this, we have to chip out the concrete, splice the cable, retension it, and then pour new cement. You are looking at $18,000 to $20,000, maybe more." $20,000. Oscar had done $20,000 worth of damage in 4 hours. "Write it up," I said, my voice cold. "Include the rush fee." Tessa arrived just as David was leaving. She had taken the afternoon off work, claiming a family emergency, which I supposed was technically true, given that my family was imploding. She brought lunch, but more importantly, she brought a scanner. "We are digitizing everything," Tessa said. "If Oscar comes back, or if he tries to claim he lost the deed, we have backups in the cloud." We spent the afternoon in my office, scanning every piece of paper in the filing cabinet. It was tedious. Rhythmic work. Scan. Save. Upload. It was the only thing keeping me from screaming. Around 4 o'clock. My phone rang. It was Marcus. "Isla?" His voice sounded different, tighter. "Are you sitting down?" "I am in the office," I said. "What is it? Did the judge sign the TRO?" "The TRO is pending," Marcus said. "This is about the permit. I had my paralegal pull the file from the county database using the number Rourke gave you. Permit 49221. Is it a fake?" I asked. "It is real in the sense that it is in the system," Marcus said. "But there is something wrong with it. Usually, a permit for an ADU conversion takes 6 weeks to process. This one was approved in 48 hours. That is impossible. Unless you know someone." I frowned. "Oscar does not know anyone in the building department. He is a district manager for a retail chain." I looked at the history, Marcus continued. "The approval signature on the permit belongs to a clerk named, let's call him Mr. Henderson. Mr. Henderson has been flagged in 3 other disputes in the county this year. All of them involved ADU conversions. All of them involved homeowners claiming they never signed the application." The air in my office seemed to drop 10 degrees. "What are you saying?" "Marcus, I am saying this might not be just your husband acting alone." Marcus said, "The permit number format fits a pattern we have seen before. There is a ring operating in the suburbs. Contractors working with a corrupt clerk to push through permits for rental conversions on properties where the title is contested. They target houses where they think the owner is passive or absent." I looked at Tessa, who was watching me with wide eyes. "They thought I would just roll over," I whispered. "They thought I would just accept it." "Oscar might have gotten himself involved in something much bigger than a renovation," Marcus said. "If this is a fraud ring, and your husband is the applicant, he is not just looking at a divorce, he is looking at a conspiracy charge." I gripped the phone. "What do I do?" "You sit tight," Marcus said. "I am calling a contact I have in the district attorney's office. This is not just a civil suit anymore. Isla, we might have just found the thread that unravels a whole sweater. Do not talk to Oscar. Do not let anyone in that house." I hung up the phone. I looked at the scan of the deed on my computer screen. Isla Lopez, my name, my house. "What is it?" Tessa asked. "Oscar didn't just hire a bad contractor," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of horror and vindication. "He joined a criminal enterprise. and he tried to drag my house into it. I looked out the window at the driveway. The white van was gone, but the ghost of it remained. The violation was deeper than I thought. They weren't just trying to move in. They were trying to use my credit, my equity, and my home to launder a scam. "Tessa," I said, turning back to my friend, "we are going to need more wine." The assault on my sanity did not begin with a shout. It began with a vibration. It was Wednesday morning, the day after I had fortified my house like a bunker. I was sitting at my kitchen island, nursing a cup of black coffee that tasted like battery acid, staring at the laptop screen where I was trying to draft a request for a structural assessment. My phone, sitting face down on the marble, buzzed, then it buzzed again and again. A rhythmic, relentless drilling that mimicked the construction noise from yesterday. I flipped it over. It was a barrage of notifications, but not from Oscar. They were from our friends, or rather, the social circle that Oscar had cultivated over the last 5 years, the couples we barbecued with, the wives I grabbed drinks with, the people who I thought knew me. "Isla, are you okay?" Oscar said. "You kicked him out," asked Sarah, a woman I had recommended for a promotion last year. "I know things are tough, but locking him out seems extreme. He is sleeping in his car," texted Mike, Oscar's gym buddy. "You need to calm down and think about the family. He is heartbroken." Read a message from a number I didn't even have saved, but the tone was unmistakably judgmental. I felt a cold flush of humiliation creep up my neck. Oscar was not sleeping in his car. He was staying at his mother's house, likely eating her empanadas and sleeping in his childhood bed. But that was not the story he was selling. He was spinning a narrative where he was the martyr, the loving husband trying to improve our home for his struggling family, and I was the cold, high-powered executive wife who cared more about her garage space than human beings. He was isolating me. He was poisoning the well before I could even draw water. Then, a text from Oscar himself popped up. It was long. A wall of gray text. "I cannot believe you are doing this. You are being so selfish. I tried to build something for us, for my mom, and you treat me like a criminal. You are destroying this family over a parking spot. Everyone agrees you are out of control. Just let the contractors back in and we can fix this." "Narcissistic collapse," Tessa said from the living room, where she was currently setting up a makeshift command center on my coffee table. She didn't even look up from her iPad. "He is losing control of the narrative, so he is trying to shame you into submission. Do not reply." "I want to tell him he is a liar," I said, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. "If you reply, you validate him," Tessa said, her voice sharp. "You are not a wife right now, Isla. You are a defendant in the court of public opinion and a plaintiff in a court of law. Silence is your shield." I put the phone down. I hated that she was right. I hated that my marriage had turned into a strategic exercise in silence, but the personal attacks were just the distraction. The real blow was about to land, and it came through my work email. A notification pinged on my laptop. "High priority. Sender Northbridge HR." My stomach dropped. I worked in risk management. I knew what HR emails looked like. They were benign until they weren't. I opened it. Subject notice of internal inquiry. "Dear Ms. Lopez, we have received an anonymous complaint regarding potential misuse of privileged client data and unauthorized access to company servers from unsecured devices. Per company policy, we are initiating a preliminary review, effective immediately. Your remote access privileges are suspended pending investigation. Please remain available for a call with the compliance officer at 10 this morning." The room seemed to tilt. Misuse of client data. In my industry, that was a death sentence. Even an accusation could freeze a career for months. "Tessa," I choked out. She was at my side in 2 seconds. She read the screen, her eyes scanning the corporate legalese. "The timing," she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "This is not a coincidence. Oscar knows your compliance protocols. He knows what scares you." "He is trying to get me fired," I said, the realization settling in like a stone in my gut. If I lose my job, I lose my income, If I lose my income, I cannot pay the mortgage. If I cannot pay the mortgage. He forces a sale, Tessa finished. Or he forces you to need his help. She grabbed my shoulders, turning me away from the screen. Listen to me. This is a tactic. He reported you anonymously, but he made a mistake. He does not know how good your IT department is. We are going to fight this the Northbridge way. Protocol, documentation, legal hold. She made me draft a reply immediately. We did not get defensive. We requested a full audit of my login logs. We formally requested that the IT department preserve all server access records for the last 30 days, specifically looking for external IP addresses that did not match my known devices. We turned the investigation back on the accuser. He thinks he is throwing sand in the gears, Tessa said as I hit send, but he just gave us a timestamp. If we can prove the anonymous tip came from his IP address or a burner phone linked to him, we add tortious interference with business relations to the lawsuit. I was still shaking, but the adrenaline was shifting from fear to a cold, predatory focus. I was done crying. Then the mailman arrived. It was the only normal thing that had happened in 2 days. The clatter of the mail slot was familiar. I walked over to the front door and picked up the pile of envelopes from the floor. Utility bill, flyer for a pizza place, coupon pack, and a thick white envelope from First National Bank. I frowned. My mortgage was with Chase. I didn't have accounts with First National. I tore it open. Inside was a welcome letter. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Mendoza, congratulations on opening your home equity line of credit. Your line of $150,000 is now active. Enclosed are your starter checks and the details of your first draw of $40,000. The world stopped. $150,000. A HELOC. A second mortgage. It was a loan secured by the equity in my house, the house I had paid for. The house I had sacrificed for. Tessa, I said, my voice sounding like it was coming from underwater. Look at this. She took the letter. He took out a HELOC when approval date is January 10th. I read, pointing to the date. 5 days before I got back. He leveraged the house while I was in Boston. But you have to sign for this, Tessa said. You need a notary. You need both spouses on the title to sign in front of a witness. He forged it, I said. Just like the permit. But Tessa, look at the address. I pointed to the client information box at the top of the letter. Mr. and Mrs. Mendoza, P.O. Box 449, Ridley Station, Ohio. Ridley Station is 20 minutes away, I said. We do not have a P.O. box. We have never had a P.O. box. He changed the mailing address. Tessa realized. He diverted the mail so you wouldn't see the application approval or the notary request. This one must have slipped through because it is a welcome kit sent to the service address by default. I ran to my laptop and logged into my main banking portal. I tried to pull my credit report. Access denied. Security freeze active. He froze my credit, I asked, bewildered. No, Tessa said, typing furiously on her own iPad. He probably tried to answer the security questions wrong too many times to lock you out so you couldn't check. Use the back door. Call the fraud line. I spent the next 40 minutes on hold with the bank's fraud department, when I finally got a human. A woman named Karen who sounded tired. The picture became horrifyingly clear. Yes, Mrs. Mendoza, Karen said. The loan was finalized on the 12th. Notarized via remote online notary. We have the video of the signing session. Video? I asked. I wasn't there. The notary log shows a woman presenting a driver's license with your name, Karen said. Isla Lopez. My hand flew to my purse. My license was there. But then I remembered I had lost my license 6 months ago. I had ordered a replacement. Oscar had told me he found the old one under the car seat a week later. I had thrown it in the junk drawer. He had someone impersonate me, I whispered. He gave my old ID to someone, maybe Rhea, maybe a stranger, and they got on a webcam and signed my life away. Freeze it, I told Karen. Freeze the funds. That was not me. I am filing a police report for identity theft and mortgage fraud. I can freeze the remaining balance, Karen said. But the initial draw of $40,000 was wired out yesterday to an account at SunTrust. Whose account? A joint account. Oscar Mendoza and Rourke Renovations. He hadn't just paid the contractor. He had funneled the money into an account he controlled with the contractor. It was money laundering. I hung up the phone. I felt sick. Physically, violently sick. This wasn't just a bad husband. This was a predator. He had been planning this for months. The lost ID, the P.O. box, the timing of my trip. I picked up my phone and called him. I broke the rule. I didn't care. Isla. He answered on the first ring, his voice sounding smugly concerned. Are you ready to talk like an adult? You took out a HELOC, I said. You stole $150,000 of equity from my house. There was a pause, a beat of silence where I could hear his breathing. I didn't steal anything, he said, his tone shifting to that maddening, reasonable calm. I leveraged our asset to improve our asset. It is a temporary advance. Isla, once the ADU is rented, the cash flow covers the loan payments. I am going to pay it back. You are making a big deal out of a standard financing strategy. You forged my signature, I screamed. You had someone pretend to be me on a camera that is 20 years in prison. Oscar. Whoa, he laughed, a nervous, jagged sound. You are hysterical. Nobody pretended to be you. You signed a power of attorney last year. Remember, when we were looking at that vacation cabin, I used that. It is legal. I froze. I never signed a power of attorney. You did. He lied. He was lying so easily now. You forgot. You forget a lot of things lately. Isla, maybe that is why work is investigating you. You seem scattered. He knew about the HR email. You sent the tip, I said, my voice turning to ice. I have no idea what you are talking about, he said. But if you keep pushing this, if you keep trying to ruin my reputation with the police, things are going to get very ugly for you. You have secrets too. Isla. I have no secrets, I said. Don't you? He lowered his voice. Fam and Ria have been talking to the neighbors. They know about how you treat us, how you wouldn't let Ria stay when she was depressed, how you prioritize your bonus checks over having kids. People talk. Isla, if you make this a legal war, the whole town is going to know exactly what kind of cold, heartless woman you are. Is your career ready for that kind of noise? He hung up. I stared at the phone. He was threatening me with gossip. He thought that shame would stop me because he still saw me as the woman who wanted everything perfect. He didn't realize that he had already burned the perfection down. He admitted it, Tessa asked. He tried to gaslight me about a power of attorney, I said. And he threatened to ruin my reputation in the neighborhood. Check the electronic signature logs, Tessa said. The bank said it was a remote notary. There has to be a digital footprint. We opened the bank's portal again. I had managed to reset the password using my passport as ID. We found the document history for the HELOC. Signed January 12th, 11:42 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. IP, address 68.142.xx.xx.x. Device iPad Pro, 12.9 5th generation. I don't own an iPad, I said. I use a Surface Pro. Oscar's mom has an iPad, Tessa said. She uses it to watch soap operas. We traced the IP. It wasn't the house. It wasn't the P.O. box. It was the Wi-Fi network of the Courtyard Marriott in downtown. Why would they be at a hotel? I asked. Maybe to use a neutral background for the video call, Tessa suggested. So the notary wouldn't see your kitchen. It was sloppy. It was desperate. And it was proof. But the final twist came that evening. While I was digging through a shared Google Drive folder that Oscar had forgotten to revoke my access to, it was a folder named Project Fortress, a name that made me want to vomit. Given that was what we called our house, inside, I found a PDF, garage_lease_draft_v2.pdf. I opened it. It was a lease agreement. Landlord Oscar Mendoza. Tenant Ria Mendoza. The terms were absurd. $10 a month rent. 10-year term. Irrevocable. And at the bottom, there was a signature under landlord consent spouse. Isla Lopez. I zoomed in on the signature. It was a good forgery. It had the slant, the pressure, but then I saw it. The letter A in Isla. When I write my name, I use a specific, somewhat archaic A that looks almost like a U because I write so fast. It's a habit from taking shorthand notes in meetings. The signature on the lease had a perfect, round, schoolteacher A, the kind Oscar used when he wrote my name on birthday cards. He had signed it. He had tried to copy my hand, but he had corrected my bad handwriting without realizing it was my fingerprint. He signed a 10-year lease with his sister, I whispered to Tessa, showing her the screen. For $10? He was trying to encumber the property, Tessa said, her eyes widening. Even if you divorce him and get the house, if that lease is valid, you can't evict Rhea for 10 years. He was trying to plant a tenant you couldn't get rid of. But the signature is fake, I said. And I can prove it. He made the A too perfect. I printed the document. I put it in the binder next to the police report and the bank letter. He threatened to tell the neighbors I am selfish, I said, standing up. He threatened to tell my job I am unstable. I looked at the pile of evidence. It was growing into a mountain. He thinks he is playing a game of chicken, I said. He thinks I will swerve to save my image. I picked up the welcome letter from the bank. He has no idea, I said, that I am not driving a car anymore. I am driving a tank. Thursday morning broke with the gray, relentless drizzle typical of the season, matching the static hum of anxiety that had become the soundtrack of my life. But inside my home office, the atmosphere was not anxious. It was clinical. My dining room table had been converted into a war room. Tessa sat at one end with her iPad and a fresh pot of coffee. I sat at the other with my laptop and a hard drive that contained the digital wreckage of my marriage. We were no longer reacting. We were hunting. Marcus just sent the subpoenaed metadata from the building department, I said, opening the file that had just pinged into my inbox. Let's see who actually applied for permit 49221. I clicked the file open. The county's digital intake system recorded everything, not just the name on the form, but the IP address of the submission, the browser type, and the operating system. Applicant name Isla Lopez, I read aloud, my voice flat. Submission time, January 10th, 2:14 in the afternoon, IP address. I paused, cross-referencing it with the list of IP addresses we had identified yesterday. It matches, I said, a cold thrill of validation shooting through me. It is the same IP as the remote notary session for the HELOC, the Courtyard Marriott downtown. So he sat in a hotel room, Tessa said, typing furiously into our timeline document. He applied for the permit and signed the mortgage fraud on the same day, using the same Wi-Fi network. That proves it wasn't you. You were in Boston. On the corporate VPN, we have the logs to prove you were logged into Northbridge's server at that exact minute. It gets better, I said, scrolling down. Look at the contact email for the permit. It is not the fake Gmail account. It is omendoza88@yahoo.com. He used his old personal email as the back-end recovery address, probably out of habit. He linked himself directly to the forgery. Got him, Tessa whispered. But we needed more. We needed to dismantle the mechanism of the lie. I switched tabs to the report I had received from Northbridge's IT security team an hour ago. My request for a legal hold and an audit had yielded fruit faster than I expected, mostly because the head of IT, a man named Gupta, liked me and hated vague HR complaints. Gupta's report is in, I told Tessa. He confirmed that the email sent to Rourke Renovations authorizing the demolition did not originate from any Northbridge server. It was sent from a device using a spoofing service, but they got sloppy. The reply to header was hard-coded to the fake Gmail, but the sender ID pinged a mobile tower in Ridley Station. Ridley Station, Tessa repeated. Where the P.O. box is. And where Oscar plays poker on Tuesday nights, I added. He sent the email from his phone, probably while sitting in the parking lot of the post office where he was setting up the mail diversion. I printed the report. It was a shield against the HR investigation, proving I hadn't misused data, but it was also a sword against Oscar. He hadn't just impersonated a spouse, he had impersonated a corporate identity. Okay, money, Tessa said. Follow the cash. I pulled up the statements for our joint checking account. This was the part I had been dreading. I was meticulous with our finances, but I realized now that I had been looking at the macro-level savings goals, investment returns, while ignoring the microtransactions. I found the deposit for Rourke, I said. $5,000 on January 5th. But look at the weeks leading up to it. I highlighted a series of withdrawals in December. December 12th, $9,000 cash withdrawal. December 15th, $9,500 cash withdrawal. December 20th, $4,000 cash withdrawal. Structuring, Tessa said, recognizing the pattern immediately. He kept every withdrawal under $10,000 to avoid triggering the automatic currency transaction report to the IRS. That is federal crime territory. ESLA, that is smurfing. He pulled out $22,500 in cash in 2 weeks, I said, staring at the numbers. Where is that money? It didn't go to the contractor's deposit. That came from the account directly. He is hoarding cash, Tessa said. Or he is paying someone off the books, someone who doesn't take checks. The inspector, I guessed. Marcus said the permit was approved in 48 hours. Maybe Mr. Henderson at the building department prefers cash. We need to see the handoff, Tessa said. If he paid a bribe, he didn't do it via Venmo. I looked at the black screen of my phone. The cameras. You said they were offline, Tessa reminded me. The live feed was offline, I corrected, and the local storage on the hub was wiped. I checked it yesterday. It was empty, but Oscar is not a tech guy. He thinks delete means gone. He doesn't know that I upgraded our subscription to the Platinum tier last Black Friday. I logged into the security company's cloud portal. Platinum tier includes 30 days of redundant cloud backup, I said, my fingers flying across the keys. It bypasses the local hub and uploads directly to their server if the connection is active. He disabled the cameras at 12:45 on the day of the demolition, but the withdrawals happened in December. I scrolled back through the calendar. December 20th, the day of the last $4,000 withdrawal. Here, I said, 7:30 p.m., the garage camera. The video load wheel spun for a second, then resolved into a crisp, night vision image. It was grainy but clear enough. The garage door was open. Oscar was standing there, wearing his heavy winter coat. A truck pulled up, not the white van, but a dark pickup. A man got out. It was Dylan Rourke. I recognized his slouch immediately. They didn't shake hands. Oscar reached into his coat and pulled out a thick, white envelope. It was bulging. He handed it to Rourke. Rourke didn't open it. He just tapped it against his palm, nodded, and put it in his truck. Then he handed Oscar a folder. That is the bribe, I said, my voice trembling with rage. He paid Rourke in cash to do the job without asking questions about the ownership. That is the $20-odd thousand. And the folder, Tessa pointed out. That is probably the fake contract and the forged permit application. Rourke knew. He is not an innocent contractor caught in the middle. He is a co-conspirator. I saved the clip. Then I saved it again to an external drive. Then I emailed it to Marcus. I called Marcus 5 minutes later. I have the video, I said. I have the structuring. I have the IP logs. Isla, Marcus's voice was grave. Stop looking for civil remedies. This is no longer about getting a stop work order. We are looking at bank fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit forgery, and structuring. This is a RICO case in miniature. You need to go to the police station, not Officer Miller. You need to ask for the fraud division. I am going tomorrow, I said. I want one more thing. Be careful, Marcus warned. If he knows you have this, he is dangerous. People who commit financial crimes get desperate when the walls close in. He doesn't know, I said. He thinks I am just a hysterical wife worried about her reputation. I hung up, as if summoned by my thoughts. My phone rang. It was Oscar. I looked at Tessa. She nodded and hit the record button on her own phone, placing it next to mine. In our state, as long as one party consented to the recording, it was legal. I consented. "Hello, Oscar?" I said. "Isla," he said. His voice was different today, softer, broken. "I have been thinking. I have been doing a lot of thinking. I am sleeping on Mom's couch, and I realized I went about this the wrong way." "You think?" I said dryly. "I did," he rushed on. "I just wanted to surprise you. I wanted to be the man of the house for once. You know, you handle everything. You pay for everything. I wanted to contribute. The HELOC. I know it looks bad. But I did it to invest in us, to give us passive income." He was sticking to the script, the benevolent idiot. "It is $150,000. Oscar," I said. "The bank is freezing the account." "That is why I am calling," he said, and I heard the tension creep back in. "The bank called me. They need a verification of the signature. It is just a formality. If you could just call them, tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you authorized me to act on your behalf. If you do that, we can unlock the funds, finish the garage, and rent it out. We can pay it back in 2 years. "You want me to lie to the bank?" I asked. "You want me to ratify the forgery?" "Don't call it forgery," he pleaded. "Call it a partnership. Look, I drafted a little document, a post-nuptial agreement. It says that we agree the garage project is a joint venture and you accept the financing. If you sign it, the bank backs off. The HR investigation at your work goes away. I can make a call, tell them it was a mistake. We can put this all behind us." There it was. The blackmail wrapped in a peace treaty. He wanted me to sign a document that would make me an accessory to his crime. If I signed that, I couldn't sue him later without incriminating myself. "Send it to me," I said, forcing my voice to sound wavering, unsure. I need to read it. I'm just so tired of fighting. Oscar." "I know, baby," he said, his voice dripping with relief. "I will email it right now. We can fix this. We are a team." "Send it," I said. "Goodbye." I hung up. "He is terrified," Tessa said. "He knows the bank is sniffing around." "He just tried to entrap me," I said. "He thinks I am stupid enough to sign a confession to save my marriage." I checked my email. The document arrived 2 minutes later. Reconciliation_agreement, PDF. I forwarded it instantly to Marcus with the subject line, "Attempted witness tampering." "One more loose end," Tessa said. "Rhea, why was she so confident Oscar agreed? So it is fine." She kept saying that, and she had the blueprints ready. Tessa had been scouring the internet for the last hour. She turned her iPad toward me. "Found her," Tessa said. It was a screenshot from a private Facebook group called ADU. Investing House Hacking. The user was Rhea_M_88. The post was dated 3 months ago. Question for the group. My brother owns a house, but his wife is a control freak and won't let us build an ADU. The house is in her name, but they are married. If we just start the work while she is away on a trip, and he signs the permits, can she legally stop us once the concrete is poured? We want to establish tenancy ASAP. Someone told me if I have a lease, she can't evict me even if she didn't sign it. Thoughts. The comments were a mix of horrifying advice. User Construction King. Get a lease signed by the husband. Possession is 9/10 of the law. If you are in, she has to evict you. Takes months. User Legal Eagle_fake. Just sign her name. Spouses sign for each other all the time. As long as the bill gets paid, nobody checks. She crowdsourced the crime, I said, staring at the screen. She planned this with him. She knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't moving in to be close to family. She was moving in to squat. And the lease you found, Tessa said. The $10 lease. That was the possession strategy. My computer pinged. A new email. I glanced at it, expecting Marcus. It was from Rourke Renovations. Subject FWD update on inspection. I opened it. It was a forward from Dylan Rourke to his own foreman. But he had accidentally included me in the CC line instead of the BCC, or maybe his autocomplete picked Isla, because he had been staring at my fake email address all week. The email body read, "Oscar just called. He says the wife is wobbling. She might sign the retro approval. Keep the crew on standby for Monday. If she signs, we pour the concrete immediately. Once the slab is set, she can't tear it out without spending $50,000. As planned. We tell the inspector to ignore the tension cable issue. Just get it done. As planned," I read aloud. Tell the inspector to ignore the tension cable. They knew they had cut the cable. They knew the structure was compromised, and they were going to cover it up with concrete and let my family sleep on top of a potential collapse. This wasn't just fraud anymore. It was reckless endangerment. I looked at Tessa. The fear was completely gone now. It had been burned away by a white-hot fury that felt cleaner than anything I had ever felt in my corporate life. "He is willing to let my house fall down to get his rent money," I said. I picked up the phone to call Marcus back. "Tell the fraud division to wait," I said to the empty room. "I am calling the district attorney directly." I looked at the reconciliation agreement Oscar had sent. I hit print. "He wants a signature," I said, watching the paper slide out of the printer. "I will give him a signature on his arrest warrant." Friday morning arrived with the heavy, bureaucratic slam of a car door. I was standing at the kitchen window, watching the street with the vigilance of a sniper. At 8 o'clock sharp, a white Ford F-150 with the county seal emblazoned on the door pulled up to the curb. It was not Rourke's van. It was not Officer Miller's cruiser. It was the Department of Building and Safety. And the man stepping out of it looked like he had absolutely no sense of humor. I walked out to meet him. "Mrs. Mendoza?" he asked, adjusting his hard hat. He held a tablet in one hand and a roll of bright red tape in the other. "Miss Lopez," I corrected him. "I am the property owner who filed the complaint about the unauthorized structural modification." "Right," he said, tapping the screen. "I am Senior Inspector Davis. I saw the report regarding permit 49221. You claim you didn't pull it." "I claim it was pulled fraudulently," I said. "And I claim the work being done is dangerous." "Let us take a look," Davis said. He walked into the garage. The crew was not there yet. Rourke had evidently decided to lay low after my cease and desist letter. But the evidence of their incompetence was screaming from the walls. Davis took one look at the trench, cut into the slab, and stopped. He didn't say a word. He just walked over to the edge, knelt down, and shined a flashlight into the cut. "Mother of God," he muttered. He stood up, his face flushed with professional anger. "Did they X-ray this slab before they cut?" "No," I said. "They just used a concrete saw." "They sliced right through a tension tendon," Davis said, pointing to a frayed steel cable visible in the jagged concrete. "You see that cable is holding your foundation together under tension. When you cut it, it snaps back like a giant rubber band. It can compromise the structural integrity of the entire garage. If they had poured concrete over this without retensioning it, the whole floor could have buckled in 5 years." He turned to the electrical panel. The wiring for the new kitchenette was a rat's nest of exposed copper and cheap connectors. "This is not up to code," Davis said, snapping photos rapidly. "No conduit, no ground fault interrupters. They are running 220 volts on wire rated for 110. This is a fire hazard waiting to happen." He walked back out to the driveway. He didn't ask for permission. He simply peeled the backing off a large, neon orange sticker that read, "Stop Work Order," in bold black letters. He slapped it directly onto the garage door, right over the handle. "Nobody enters this structure," Davis announced, his voice carrying down the quiet street. "I am red tagging this project. If anyone touches a tool in there, call the sheriff. I am flagging the permit as suspended pending a fraud investigation." As he was writing up the citation, Rourke's white van turned the corner. I watched Rourke's face as he saw the county truck and the orange sticker. He slowed down, his eyes widening. He didn't stop. He didn't pull into the driveway. He hit the gas and kept driving, speeding past his own job site like a criminal fleeing a bank robbery. "Smart man," Davis said without looking up from his tablet. "I am revoking his license effective noon today." The shift in power was palpable. Yesterday, I was a nagging wife. Today, I was the whistleblower on a public safety hazard. By 10 in the morning, the atmosphere had shifted even further. The police, who had been so dismissive on Tuesday, were now very interested in the details of my life. Detective Vance, no relation to my divorce lawyer, sat in my living room. He was a fraud specialist, a man who understood paper trails better than he understood street crime. He had the copies of the HELOC paperwork, the IP logs, and the video of the cash handoff I had sent to the district attorney. "This changes things," Vance said, looking at the screenshot of the remote notary session. "Domestic disputes are one thing, but this is sophisticated identity theft. He didn't just spend your money, he created a synthetic identity to secure a loan from a federally insured bank. That is wire fraud." "And the email to the contractor?" I asked, "impersonating me to authorize the demolition." "Criminal impersonation," Vance said. "And since it resulted in property damage exceeding $5,000, it is a felony." He closed his notebook. "We are not treating this as a civil matter anymore. Ms. Lopez, we are opening a criminal case file. We need to interview the notary who signed off on this, and we need to bring Mr. Mendoza in for questioning." "He is at his mother's house," I said, "in Ridley Station." "We know," Vance said. "We ran his plates. We will be paying him a visit." The vindication should have felt sweet. Instead, it felt cold. I was watching the machinery of the state turn its gears toward the man I had slept next to for 3 years. It was necessary, but it was grim. But if the law was finally on my side, the neighborhood was a different battlefield. Around noon, I drove to Northbridge to meet with the IT director and finalize the evidence for HR. I parked in the back lot, usually empty on Fridays, trying to avoid the prying eyes of colleagues who might have heard rumors. As I walked toward the building, a silver sedan blocked my path. Dolores Mendoza stepped out. She was not wearing her usual shawl. She was wearing a tracksuit, and her face was twisted into a mask of pure venomous victimization. Rhea was in the passenger seat, holding her phone up, recording. "You!" Dolores shouted, her voice shrill enough to turn heads. "You heartless witch!" I stopped. Keeping a distance of 10 feet, I pulled out my own phone and hit record. "Dolores," I said calmly, "do not approach me." "You called the police on my son," she screamed, advancing on me. "You red-tagged the house. After everything he did for you, he was trying to give us a home and you treat us like criminals." "He committed fraud." "Dolores," I said, my voice steady. "And you know it. You were there when he cut the floor." "It is his house too," she yelled. "He has rights. You think you are better than us because you have a degree. You are nothing without him. You are just a cold, barren woman who cares more about her car than her family." "I am asking you to leave," I said. "This is private property. Make me," Rhea shouted from the car. "Go ahead. Isla, hit an old woman. Let us see how that looks to your precious HR department." They were trying to bait me. They wanted a reaction. They wanted me to scream, to shove, to do anything that would look bad on the video Rhea was live streaming to God knows who. I didn't take the bait. I turned around, walked back to the security kiosk at the entrance of the parking garage, and tapped on the glass. The guard, a large man named Marcus ironically, stepped out. "Marcus," I said, "these 2 individuals are harassing me. They are not employees. Please remove them." Marcus looked at Dolores, who was still shouting about family values, and then at me. He nodded. He stepped forward, his hand resting on his belt. "Ladies," Marcus boomed, "you need to clear the lot, now, or I am calling the cops for trespassing." Dolores looked at the guard, then at me. She spat on the ground, a gesture so vile and archaic it almost shocked me, and got back into the car. "This isn't over," she screeched as she slammed the door. "The whole town will know what you are." They peeled out, tires screeching. I saved the video. I had my evidence for the expanded restraining order. When I got back to my desk, my inbox contained a new email from Oscar. The subject line was simply, "Please." I opened it against my better judgment. "Isla, I am sorry things got heated. Mom is upset. I know. I am trying to calm her down. But please, stop the lawyers. Stop the police. You are ruining my life over a misunderstanding. I know I made mistakes with the paperwork, but I did it because I was desperate to make you happy. I wanted the garage to be a surprise revenue stream so you wouldn't have to work so hard. I did it for you. Can we just meet, no lawyers? Just us? Coffee at the place on Main Street. 10 minutes. I can explain the signature. I can explain the loan. Just give me a chance to fix it before you destroy everything we built." It was a masterclass in manipulation. He was rewriting history, casting himself as the misunderstood hero and me as the overworked victim he was trying to save. "I did it for you," the classic abuser's refrain. I forwarded the email to my lawyer. "Marcus Keene, add this to the TRO application." I wrote, "He is trying to contact me directly to coerce a settlement." Then I blocked his email address. By the time I got home, the sun was setting, casting long shadows over the orange sticker on my garage door. The house felt like a fortress under siege, but at least the walls were holding. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the caller ID said, "Oak Creek Neighbor." I picked it up. "Hello. Isla, this is Martha Higgins, from down the block, the Blue Colonial." Martha was the neighborhood busybody, the woman who knew whose trash cans were out too early and whose grass was half an inch too high. I braced myself for a lecture on the eyesore of the construction van. "Hi, Martha," I said wearily. "I know the garage is a mess. I am dealing with it." "Oh, honey, I am not calling to complain," Martha said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I saw the red tag, and I saw the police this morning. Good for you." I blinked. "Excuse me." "That man," Martha said. "The contractor? Rourke? He came by my house 3 months ago. Told me I could convert my shed into a rental unit for extra cash. Said he knew a guy at the county who could fast-track the permits so I wouldn't have to pay the full fees. It sounded fishy to me, so I sent him away. But then I saw him at your place, and I thought, oh, Isla must have vetted him, but seeing that red tag, he scammed you. Didn't he?" "He tried," I said. "Did he mention the permit guy's name?" "He did," Martha said. "He called him our friend in the back office. Said as long as we paid in cash, the paperwork would disappear into the system until the work was done. I just thought you should know. It wasn't just you, dear. They have been working this street for a while." "Thank you, Martha," I said, genuinely grateful. "That is very helpful." "And Isla," Martha added, "don't worry about what Dolores is saying on Facebook. We all know she is crazy. Anyone who brings a bullhorn to a homeowners association meeting loses their credibility. You hold your ground." I hung up, feeling a strange warmth in my chest. The social pressure Oscar had threatened me with was backfiring. He had underestimated the neighborhood's ability to smell a rat, but the real bombshell dropped at 5:30. Marcus Keene called me. He sounded breathless. "Isla, I just got off the phone with the senior inspector, Davis, the one who red-tagged your house." "I met him," I said. "He seems competent?" "He is more than competent. He is furious," Marcus said. "He ran the permit number 49221 through the archive. He wanted to know why it was approved so fast. And it turns out that permit number doesn't exist in the active database," Marcus said. "It is a ghost permit. The clerk, Henderson, issued the physical paper with the stamp, but he never entered it into the digital system. He took the application fee and likely a bribe and pocketed it. The permit looked real on paper. So if a patrol car drove by, it looked legal, but legally, the county never authorized anything. So the forgery didn't even matter," I asked, "because the permit was fake anyway." Oh, it matters, Marcus said. Because Davis found 5 other permits issued by Henderson in the last year with the same handwriting on the signature line. Not the homeowner's handwriting, the forger's handwriting. I gripped the phone. The same forger. Exactly, Marcus said. The distinctive A, you notice, the round one. It appears on permits for properties all over the district. It looks like your husband wasn't just forging your name. Isla. He might have been the designated signer for a ring of illegal ADU conversions. He was signing for other phantom spouses. The floor seemed to drop out from under me. I mean, Oscar might be the friend who handles the paperwork for Rourke, Marcus said. He wasn't just a customer, he was the inside man. He used your house to test the latest scam because he thought he could control you. But if he has been signing fake permits for Rourke all over town, he's looking at 20 counts of fraud. This is not a domestic dispute. Isla, this is a racketeering case. I looked out the window at the quiet, suburban street. It looked so normal. But underneath, there were rot and wires that didn't connect, hidden by drywall and silence. He is going to prison, I whispered. If the DA connects the dots? Yes, Marcus said. And you just handed them the pen. I hung up the phone. I looked at the apology email on my screen. I did it for you. He hadn't done it for me. He had done it because he was part of a machine that ate equity and spit out cash, and he had fed me into the gears. I walked to the front door and checked the lock. The deadbolt was solid. The camera was recording. The red tag was glowing under the porch light like a shield. Let them come. I was ready. Monday morning did not begin with a bang, but with the soft, heavy thud of a courier envelope hitting Marcus Keene's mahogany desk. I sat opposite him, my hands folded in my lap, watching as he sliced the seal open with a silver letter opener. The air in the office was thick with the scent of old paper and expensive cologne, a stark contrast to the dust and deception that had filled my weekend. It is from Oscar's attorney, Marcus said, unfolding the document. He scanned it, his eyebrows lifting slightly behind his wire-rimmed glasses. They are moving fast. Usually, a retained counsel takes a week to draft a proposal. They sent this over the weekend. Desperation breeds efficiency, I said. What is the offer? Marcus slid the paper across the desk. They are calling it a Memorandum of Understanding regarding marital asset improvement. They are offering to cover 50% of the structural repair costs for the garage capped at $10,000 if you agree to withdraw the restraining order application and sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding the construction details. I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. He wants me to pay for half of the damage he caused, and he wants me to sign an NDA. Why? To protect his mother's feelings. Read paragraph 4, Marcus said. Tapping the page with his index finger, I looked down. Buried in the dense legalese about mutual release of claims and preservation of family harmony was a clause that made my blood run cold. The wife acknowledges that the home equity line of credit HELOC account, ending in 449, was opened with her knowledge and constructive consent for the purpose of joint property improvement. The wife agrees to ratify all prior signatures associated with said account as authorized interactions by her spouse. I looked up at Marcus. He is trying to get me to retroactively approve the bank fraud. Exactly, Marcus said. He knows the bank is investigating. He knows the federal wire fraud statute carries a sentence of up to 30 years. If you sign this, you are telling the bank. It wasn't fraud. It was just a miscommunication. You save him from prison, and in exchange, he graciously allows you to pay for half of the repairs to your own house. It is a trap, I said. If I sign this, I become an accessory. I become a co-conspirator. It is a Hail Mary, Marcus corrected. He is terrified. He is trying to leverage the marriage to cover the crime. So, what is our response? I took the paper and folded it neatly. I didn't rip it up. I didn't throw it. I treated it like what it was evidence of his intent to obstruct justice. No deal, I said. Here is my counteroffer. Write it down. Marcus picked up his pen. 1, I listed, counting off on my fingers. He pays 100% of the remediation costs, as determined by my engineer, not his contractor. 2, he provides a notarized letter to the bank admitting that he opened the HELOC without my knowledge or consent. And he authorizes the immediate closure of the line and the return of the initial draw. 3, he writes a formal letter of apology to the Human Resources Department at Northbridge Risk Solutions, retracting his anonymous complaint and admitting it was false and malicious. Marcus whistled low. He will never sign that apology. It is an admission of tortious interference. I am not done, I said. 4, he agrees to a permanent, non-expiring restraining order barring him, his mother, and his sister from coming within 500 feet of my residence or my workplace. And 5, he vacates the property immediately and waives any claim to the equity appreciation derived from my sole ownership. That is the nuclear option. Isla, Marcus said, looking at me with a mix of concern and admiration. You are asking him to surrender everything. He tried to steal my identity. Marcus, I said, standing up and smoothing my skirt. He tried to bankrupt me. He tried to frame me at my job. I am not negotiating a divorce settlement. I am negotiating the terms of his surrender. I will draft it, Marcus said. But be prepared. When he reads this, he is going to panic. A cornered animal bites. Let him bite, I said. I have a muzzle. I left the lawyer's office and drove straight to Northbridge. It was time to clear my name. The meeting with HR was in a glass-walled conference room on the 42nd floor. The director of HR, a woman named Sharon, who usually greeted me with a smile, was stone-faced. Beside her sat the compliance officer and Gupta, the IT director. I didn't wait for them to start. I placed a thick binder on the table. This is a chronological record of the events of the last week, I said, my voice steady and professional. Tab A contains the police report filed regarding the unauthorized construction at my home. Tab B contains the affidavit from my attorney regarding the identity theft committed by my estranged husband. Tab C contains the IT forensic report confirming that the anonymous complaint lodged against me originated from the same IP address used to commit bank fraud in my name. Gupta nodded, tapping his laptop. I have verified the IP logs. Sharon? The complaint came from a device associated with Oscar Mendoza. It matches the digital footprint of the phishing email sent to the contractor. Sharon looked through the binder. Her expression shifted from suspicion to shock, and finally to sympathy. Isla, she said, closing the file. We had no idea it was this personal. It is personal, I said. But it is also professional. My husband attempted to weaponize this company's compliance policy to harass me. He tried to destabilize my employment to force me into a financial settlement. I am the victim of a crime, not the perpetrator of a policy violation. The inquiry is closed, the compliance officer said immediately. We will scrub the complaint from your file. It will be recorded as a malicious external attack. Thank you, I said. I have one more request. Given the escalating behavior of Mr. Mendoza and his family, I am requesting a security escort to and from my vehicle for the next 2 weeks. And I want his name and photo added to the building's Do Not Admit list. Done, Sharon said. We will alert building security immediately. I walked out of that meeting feeling lighter. I had reclaimed my professional ground. The one thing Oscar thought he could destroy my career was now fortified against him. But the silence from Oscar didn't last. By 2 p.m, my phone began to light up. 5 missed calls from Oscar, 3 missed calls from Dolores, 2 missed calls from unknown number. He had received the counteroffer. I didn't answer. I let them go to voicemail. Later, I would listen to them with Tessa, transcribing every threat, every plea, every shift in tone for the legal file. The first voicemail was angry. Isla, are you insane? You want me to admit to a felony in writing? You are trying to send me to jail. You need to fire that lawyer and talk to me. The second was bargaining. Look, baby, I can pay the $10,000. I can get the money. Mom has some savings. We can fix the garage. Just drop the bank thing. Please, you know I can't have a record in my line of work. The third was weeping. I just wanted to be enough for you. You always make me feel so small. I just wanted to do something big. Why are you so cruel? I listened to them in my kitchen. Tessa sitting beside me with her headphones on, typing the transcriptions into a shared document. He is cycling through the stages of grief, Tessa observed. He is currently at bargaining. Next comes depression, then acceptance, or in his case, indictment. He is not going to accept it, I said. He is going to try something stupid. Speaking of stupid, Tessa said, turning her laptop toward me. I found something else. I ran a search on his email address, the Yahoo one he used for the permit on a few real estate forums. She pointed to a calendar entry on a booking site for real estate agents. Consultation listing strategy for single-family home in Oak Creek. Client Oscar Mendoza. Date, January 21st. That is tomorrow, I said. He is trying to sell the house. He can't sell it, Tessa said. It is in your name. He can if he has a power of attorney, I said, remembering his lie from the phone call. If he forged a power of attorney, he could list it. He could try to get a cash offer, take the deposit, and run before the title company realizes the fraud. He is trying to liquidate the asset before you can lock him out, Tessa said. He knows the walls are closing in. Call Marcus, I said. Tell him to file a lis pendens on the property immediately. It puts a cloud on the title. No realtor will touch it if there is pending litigation recorded against the deed. My phone buzzed again. It wasn't Oscar. It was a local number I didn't recognize. Isla Lopez, a woman's voice asked. She sounded nervous, her voice tight. Speaking, I said. My name is Sarah Jenkins. Martha Higgins gave me your number. She said you were dealing with Dylan Rourke. I sat up straighter. I am. He is the contractor who destroyed my garage. He destroyed my life, Sarah said. Her voice cracked. 2 years ago, he told me he could build an in-law suite for my dad. He took $40,000. He did the demolition. Then he stopped. He said the county red-tagged it. He said I needed to pay more for variances. When I refused, he put a mechanic's lien on my house. He claimed I hadn't paid him. Did he have a permit? I asked. He showed me one, Sarah said. But later, when I went to the county, they said it was fake. But here's the thing. Isla, I kept the texts. I have messages where he tells me not to worry about the signatures because he has a guy who handles the paperwork. And I have a receipt for $500 labeled Expedited Processing Fee, H. H, I whispered. Henderson, the clerk. I saw your post on the neighborhood watch page. Sarah continued. I saw you are fighting him. I want to help. I have a box of documents. I have the fake permit. I have the lien notice. And I have a voicemail. What is on the voicemail? I asked. It is not from Rourke, Sarah said. It is from his partner, the guy who did the paperwork. He called me by mistake one night, thinking he was calling Rourke. He didn't realize it went to my voicemail. He was drunk. I think, can you send it to me? I asked, my heart hammering against my ribs. I am sending it now, Sarah said. A moment later, an audio file appeared in my messages. I pressed play. The background noise was loud, a bar, maybe, or a party. Then a man's voice, slurring slightly but unmistakably familiar. Dylan, buddy, relax. She is just a housewife. She doesn't know what a variance is. If she complains, just tell her the county is backed up. I signed the forms myself. It is airtight. Just get the cash and let's go. We have 3 more lined up in Ridley Station. It was Oscar. It was my husband's voice, from 2 years ago, plotting to defraud a stranger. He wasn't just a participant. He was the architect. Tessa, I said, my voice trembling not with fear, but with the sheer magnitude of the betrayal. He has been doing this for years. Rourke is the muscle. Oscar is the brains. He uses his nice guy persona to handle the clients while Rourke does the dirty work. That is the smoking gun, Tessa said, staring at the phone. That connects him to a pattern of racketeering. That is Rico. It gets worse, I said. Or better, depending on how you look at it. I opened my email. Another message had come in. This one from a generic address. audit_log_system_automatic_notification. It was from the digital forensics expert Tessa had hired to mirror the hard drive of the Project Fortress folder. Ms. Lopez. We recovered a deleted file from the cloud backup. It appears to be a voice memo recorded on January 9th. The metadata suggests it was recorded on an iPhone registered to Oscar Mendoza. I downloaded the file. It was recorded inside a car. The engine hum was audible. Oscar's voice. Okay, Dylan. Listen, she's coming back on the 15th. We have 5 days. Get the slab cut. Get the pipes in. Once the concrete is poured, she can't do anything. It will cost her $50,000 to rip it out. She is cheap. She won't pay that. She will just bitch and moan, and then she will sign the papers to legalize it. She always folds if I make her feel guilty enough. There was a pause. Then Rourke's voice. And if she doesn't? If she calls the cops? Oscar laughed. It was a cold, dismissive sound that I had never heard from him before. If she sues, just say she is unstable. Tell them she is having a breakdown. I will handle that part. I have been planting seeds with the neighbors for months. Everyone thinks she is a frigid workaholic. Nobody will believe her over the grieving son trying to help his mom. We are bulletproof. The recording ended. The room was silent. Tessa looked at me, her eyes wide with horror. He planned to gaslight you, she whispered. He planned to use your personality against you. He planted the rumors. He set the stage. I stood up. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. The orange sticker on the garage was glowing under the street lamp. He thinks I am cheap, I said softly. He thinks I will fold to save money. I turned back to Tessa. He forgot one thing, I said. I am a risk analyst. I don't avoid cost. I manage exposure. And he just became a total loss. I picked up the phone and dialed Marcus. I have the recording, I said. I have him conspiring to commit fraud. I have him admitting to a smear campaign, and I have him linking himself to a multi-year racketeering scheme. Isla, Marcus said, his voice serious. This is it. Do you want to send this to his lawyer with the demand letter? No, I said. Send the demand letter, but keep the recording. If he refuses to sign, if he pushes back even 1 inch, we give the recording to the district attorney. You are giving him a chance to surrender, Marcus asked. No, I said. I am giving him a chance to run. Because once the DA hears this, he won't be leaving this house in a car. He will be leaving in cuffs. I hung up. I looked at the empty spot on the wall where our wedding photo used to hang. I had taken it down yesterday. Game over, Oscar, I whispered. Checkmate. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety, a scent I had grown accustomed to in my corporate life but never expected to inhale as a plaintiff against my own husband. It was Tuesday morning, exactly 1 week since I had walked into my garage and found a stranger cutting a hole in my life. I sat at the plaintiff's table next to Marcus Keene. My posture was rigid, my hands clasped loosely on the table. I wore a navy blue suit, the armor of my profession, across the aisle. Oscar sat with his mother and a lawyer who looked like he charged by the minute and regretted every second of it. Dolores was dabbing at dry eyes with a lace handkerchief. Performing the role of the grieving matriarch for an audience of one the judge. Judge Holloway was a woman in her 60s with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose and an expression that suggested she had heard every variation of a lie that human beings were capable of telling. We are here on the matter of Lopez versus Mendoza, Judge Holloway said, her voice dry as parchment. Application for a permanent restraining order and exclusive possession of the marital residence pending divorce proceedings. Counsel for the respondent. You may proceed. Oscar's lawyer stood up. He smoothed his tie. Your Honor, This is a tragic case of a marital miscommunication spiraling out of control. My client, Mr. Mendoza, attempted to improve the family home as a surprise for his wife. He authorized renovations to create an accessory dwelling unit to support his aging mother and sister. Was he overzealous, perhaps? But criminal hardly. Ms. Lopez has reacted with extreme hostility, locking him out of his own home and filing frivolous police reports. We ask that the restraining order be denied and that Mr. Mendoza be allowed to return to the residence to oversee the completion of the project he financed. Oscar looked down at his hands, playing the part of the misunderstood saint perfectly. He looked small. He looked harmless. Then it was our turn. Marcus did not stand up immediately. He arranged 3 binders on the table. Thud, thud, thud. The sound echoed in the quiet room. "Your Honor," Marcus said, his voice low and devoid of theatrics. "If this were a misunderstanding, we would be in mediation. But we are not here because of a renovation. We are here because of a systematic campaign of identity theft, bank fraud, and criminal conspiracy." Marcus opened the first binder. "Exhibit A," he announced. "A forensic report from the IT department of Northbridge Risk Solutions. It confirms that on January 9th, an email authorizing the demolition of the plaintiff's garage was sent not by the plaintiff, but by the respondent. Using a spoofing service to impersonate his wife, he did not ask for permission. Your Honor, he stole her identity to grant it." He flipped a page. "Exhibit B, a video log from First National Bank. It shows a remote notary session dated January 12th. In this video, an individual who is emphatically not Ms. Lopez uses her stolen driver's license to sign a home equity line of credit for $150,000. The IP address for this session traces to a hotel room booked on the respondent's credit card." Oscar shifted in his seat. Dolores stopped dabbing her eyes. The air in the room grew heavy. "And finally," Marcus said, playing the ace card we had debated using, "Exhibit C, an audio recording recovered from the respondent's cloud backup. In this recording, Mr. Mendoza instructs his contractor to ignore safety codes and, I quote, tell them she is unstable if she objects. He details a plan to gaslight his wife into accepting a dangerous structural modification by leveraging her fear of public embarrassment." Marcus paused, letting the word gaslight hang in the air like smoke. "This is not a husband trying to help his family," Marcus concluded. "This is a predator who viewed his wife not as a partner, but as a resource to be mined. We are asking for the maximum protection under the law." Judge Holloway looked at Oscar. Her eyes were no longer bored. They were sharp, piercing. "Mr. Mendoza," she said, "did you forge your wife's signature on a mortgage application?" Oscar's lawyer tried to intervene. "Your Honor, my client asserts his Fifth Amendment right." "Sit down, counselor," Judge Holloway snapped. She looked back at Oscar. "The evidence suggests that you have engaged in a pattern of conduct that is not only abusive but felonious. This court finds that the plaintiff has established a credible threat to her safety and financial security." She banged her gavel. It sounded like a gunshot. "The temporary restraining order is converted to a permanent order of protection. Mr. Mendoza, you are barred from coming within 500 feet of Miss Lopez, her residence, or her place of employment. You are ordered to vacate the property immediately. Furthermore, I am issuing an immediate asset restraint. All joint accounts are frozen pending a forensic accounting. You are not to sell, transfer, or encumber any property." Oscar slumped in his chair. He looked at Dolores, but she was staring straight ahead, her face pale. The narrative had collapsed. The good son was now a documented fraudster. "Ms. Lopez," the judge said, turning to me, "do you have anything to add?" I stood up. My legs felt steady. "Your Honor," I said, my voice clear, "I do not wish to punish his family. I simply refuse to be the fuel they burn to keep themselves warm. I am reclaiming my life." "So ordered," Judge Holloway said. We walked out of the courtroom 5 minutes later. The hallway was crowded with lawyers and clients. the hum of the legal system churning on. Oscar exited a moment later, flanked by his mother and sister. He looked at me, his eyes full of a venomous mix of fear and hatred. He opened his mouth to speak, perhaps to whisper one last threat, one last manipulation, but he never got the chance. As soon as he stepped past the metal detectors, two men in dark suits stepped forward. They were not court security. They were wearing badges that read, District Attorney's Office, Economic Crimes Division. Oscar Mendoza, one of them asked. Oscar froze. Yes. You are under arrest for wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and conspiracy to commit forgery, the officer said. He pulled a pair of handcuffs from his belt. The metal glinted under the fluorescent lights. What? No, Oscar stammered, backing up. This is a civil matter, my lawyer said. This is a criminal warrant. Sir, the officer said, spinning him around and slamming him against the wall. Click, click. The sound of the cuffs locking was louder than the judge's gavel. Dolores, Oscar screamed. Call someone. Call Rourke. We already have Mr. Rourke, the second officer said calmly. He was picked up at his home an hour ago. He is currently sharing his client list with us. He had a lot to say about the permits you signed for him. Mr. Mendoza. Dolores let out a wail that sounded like a siren. Rhea tried to back away, looking at her phone as if she could delete her involvement, delete the Facebook posts, delete the conspiracy. Ms. Rhea Mendoza, the officer asked, turning to her. We have a warrant for your phone as well, accessory to fraud. I watched them. I watched the man who had slept in my bed, the man who had promised to love and cherish me, being read his Miranda rights in a public hallway. I watched his mother scream at the officers. I watched his sister crumble. It should have been sad. It should have been a tragedy. But all I felt was the immense, weightless sensation of a tumor being removed. I turned to Marcus. Is it over? I asked. The marriage is over, Marcus said, putting his hand on my shoulder. The criminal trial is just beginning, but you are free. The months that followed were a blur of paperwork. But it was the kind of paperwork I liked. It was the paperwork of resolution. Oscar, facing a federal indictment and the testimony of his former partner Dylan Rourke, took a plea deal to avoid a 10-year sentence. He pleaded guilty to 2 counts of wire fraud. He was sentenced to 30 months in a minimum security facility, followed by 5 years of probation. Part of his plea agreement included full restitution. Since Oscar had no assets, having spent his secret cash stash on gambling and investments that never paid off, the restitution came from the sale of his mother's house in Ridley Station. Dolores had to downsize to a rental apartment. Rhea moved to a different state, her influencer dreams crushed by a criminal record for aiding and abetting. We settled the divorce quietly. I got everything, the house, the car, the retirement accounts. In exchange, I agreed not to pursue a separate civil suit for emotional distress, which saved him from bankruptcy, but left him with nothing but his freedom eventually. The HELOC was voided by the bank once the fraud was proven. The lien on my title was scrubbed. My credit report was restored to its pristine 800-plus score. But the real victory was the garage. I hired a new contractor, a licensed, insured, expensive contractor recommended by the structural engineer. They jackhammered out the botched concrete. They spliced the tension cable, restoring the spine of my home. They removed the illegal plumbing and the dangerous wiring. I didn't turn it back into a parking spot. I realized I didn't want to park my car there anymore. That space had been the battleground, and I wanted to reclaim it as territory. I turned it into a studio, not an apartment for in-laws, but a workspace for me. I installed skylights. I put in a wall of bookshelves. I bought a drafting table. It became the place where I worked on my own projects, where I read, where I drank wine and looked at the garden I was finally planting. It was 6 months later, on a warm July evening, that I hosted the dinner. It was small, just Tessa, Marcus, who had become a friend, and Sarah Jenkins, the neighbor who had helped me break the case. We sat on my back patio. The sliding glass doors opened to the warm summer air. The smell of grilled salmon and jasmine bloomed around us. There was no construction noise. There were no white vans. There were no frantic text messages. "To the fortress," Tessa said, raising her glass of Sauvignon Blanc. "To the fortress," I repeated, clinking my glass against hers. I looked at the garage. The light from the studio spilled out onto the driveway. A soft, golden rectangle in the darkness. It wasn't a scar anymore. It was a beacon. I had lost a husband. I had lost the illusion of a perfect family. I had lost the naive belief that the people who claim to love you will never hurt you. But as I looked around the table at the people who had stood by me when the walls were crumbling, I realized what I had gained. I had gained the absolute certainty of my own strength. I had stared down a bulldozer and won. I took a sip of wine. It tasted like summer. It tasted like justice. It tasted like the most expensive, luxurious thing in the world, Cess. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening from your car, your office, or maybe while working on your own home renovation? Please let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed Isla's journey to justice, please subscribe to Juliet Revenge Stories, hit that like button, and smash the hype button to help this story reach more people who need to hear that sometimes. The best revenge is simply reclaiming your life.